Good morning. Give us just a second while the PowerPoint loads up. That's very important. I was in prison and you came to me. Those are not my words. Those are words of a guy that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But if you look in the back of your program, for those of you who are new, and I see some new faces who are here just because I invited you, so thank you all for joining. But if you look on the back, if you're wondering what Unitarianism is, it's this. It's these 7 principles. If you believe in these 7 things, you're one of us. And notice absent from the list is believing that there is or is not a God. That's up to you. That's not on the list. You can be one of us either way. But if you believe in these 7 things, you're one of us. And what I want to talk about today is the 7th one. The 7th one is respect for the interdependent web of all existence. What exactly is that? That is the butterfly in China that flaps its wings and causes a hurricane, right? In Star Trek, there is an episode where they travel back in time and they stop a woman from being hit by a bus, and then she becomes a political figure, and she meets FDR, and she convinces him to hold off on entering World War II, and it gives the Germans just enough time to develop the atom bomb first, and they take over the world, all because they stopped this woman from getting hit by a bus. So they had to go back in time and undo the change that they made. We know about this, right? If you know anything about science fiction, you travel back in time and you change one little thing, and then you come back to the present and you don't exist and things like that. There's, of course, this one, right, Back to the Future, where he goes back and he accidentally prevents his mom and his dad from meeting, and then it comes back to the future and he doesn't exist anymore, right? And everybody knows this movie, It's a Wonderful Life, right? You want to know why you know this movie? This is great lawyer stuff here. They forgot to renew the copyright in 1975, and it accidentally lapsed into the public domain, and that's why every UHF TV channel could play it endlessly on the holidays without having to pay any royalties, and it became a big hit, right, around the 1970s. But this is a movie about a guy who wishes that he was never born, and then an angel grants his wish, and then he sees what life would have been like in his town if he had never been born, and everything that he ever did, and every life that he ever saved, and every life that he ever touched never happened, and everybody was miserable without him, all because of one person. We're comfortable, ironically, the reason you know about that is because one person forgot to renew the copyright, right? He didn't realize when he was doing it that it was going to cause this movie to become a hit, and that it was going to cause some guy in Tampa to be talking about it on an October 1st, right? But that's the butterfly that flaps its wings, and here's the hurricane, right? It takes one little thing. Now, we think about that all the time, right? When we think about time travel, when we think about going back in time. But what we don't think about, I don't know who came up with this, some random person on the internet. It kind of caught fire. I'd love to give credit to whoever gave this observation, but I don't know who it was. But they say when we think about time travel, we think about accidentally changing the present, but nobody in the present thinks that they can radically change the future by doing one thing. In Star Trek and Back to the Future and It's a Wonderful Life, we have somebody who's adding or deleting somebody from the story of humanity, and it changes everything dramatically. And you can change that dramatically every day by adding or deleting something, by making one small change, by doing one small thing. What's that called? Where's my pagans? What do you call that when you do something and you try to change the universe by doing some small symbolic act? Do you guys have a word for that? Magic, yes, that's the word for it. But I'm not here to talk about magic right now. I want to talk about Southern Baptists. Might have some intervention here because my clicker stopped working as soon as I tried to click to the Southern Baptist slide. But maybe you can click me, Jerry. I came prepared. I brought it on my phone here. I'm reading it. So I want to talk about a fellow named Russell Moore. You might have heard of him. In fact, this is a Unitarian church, and he said this on NPR, so I know y'all did hear it. And he was the chief ethicist for the Southern Baptist Convention. And Mr. Moore said he recently resigned. And he said that the reason that he resigned is because he had multiple pastors tell him the exact same story. And the story was that they would preach the words of Jesus Christ. That's right, I said his name in a Unitarian church. Last time it happened was when Bill tripped over a mic cable. But he said he would preach the words of Jesus Christ, and he would talk about the Sermon on the Mount and turning the other cheek and not resisting evil. What do we call it? What did Martin Luther King call that? Nonviolent resistance, right? But Jesus was talking about it 2,000 years before. And he would talk about that, and then the parishioners would come up to the pastors afterwards, and they would say, where did you get those liberal talking points? And they'd say, those are literally the words of Jesus Christ, the guy that you worship and came here to hear his words. And I said them, and I said, yeah, but we don't like that anymore, say the Southern Baptists. But that's not for us. You know, we want to hear, that's weak, they say. And so he said, I think we're having a moral crisis inside the Southern Baptist Convention if you can't even preach the words of the guy that we say that we are here to believe in, right? Because people don't want to hear it. How are we doing? Oh, here we go. Oh, aren't you the best? Perfect timing. All right, there's Russell. But you know who does believe in that stuff? We do. Can you believe that? It's on our list. I think it's on the back of our, if it's not, it should be. We have our seven principles and our 6 sources. And number 4 is Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. That's ours too, right? We're sharing that with them. And they're not going to go for it, but you know we are. So here's what they were talking about. Here's what the Southern Baptists don't like to hear anymore. Jesus said, you've heard it say eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone tries to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. That's Jesus talking about nonviolent resistance 2,000 years before Martin Luther King picked up where he left off, right? Now, here's what the Southern Baptists kind of prefer to hear. My motto is always get even. When somebody screws you, screw them back in spades. That was Donald Trump that said that. He said that in his book, Think Big and Kick Ass. So that's something that's happened. That's a problem that the Southern Baptist pastors are having, is that their parishioners are coming saying, stop reading to us from the Bible. Read to us from Think Big and Kick Ass. That's what we want to hear from, right? Did Donald come up with that all by himself? No, this is from the Satanic Bible. If a man smites thee on one cheek, smash him on the other. What has happened where the Southern Baptists are coming up to their pastors saying, stop reading the Jesus words from the Jesus Bible. We want to hear from Think Big and Kick Ass. We want to hear from the Satanic Bible. That's more our style these days, right? What does it say in the Bible about showing hospitality to immigrants? It says, don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. It says, when a foreigner resides among you in your land, don't mistreat them. Treat them as your native born. Love them as yourself. What do those people in the Southern Baptist churches say? Here's Jeff Sessions saying, we need to take the children away. We're going to separate the moms from their children, and we're going to make them cry, and that'll discourage people from coming. That's the plan, right? Our governor says, we're going to shoot them stone cold dead. And then he's going to sell you a T-shirt that says Stone Cold Dead for $35, right? That's where we're coming from. This is fun, right? Let's keep going. So what does it say about... What does it say? I'm just contrasting what the book says. You know, I've heard it said that the difference between a Christian and a Unitarian is that a Christian believes every word in the Bible, but they ain't necessarily read all of them. And a Unitarian has read all of them, but doesn't necessarily believe them, right? So, but here's what it says. It says, don't forget about those in jail. Suffer with them as though you were in there yourself. It says, I, the Lord, have called on you in righteousness to open the eyes that are blind and to free captives from prison, to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. We just sang about that a minute ago, didn't we? We said, in prison cell and dungeon vial, our thoughts to them are winging. We're going to do one better than thoughts, but I'm leading up to that, right? Jesus said, I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Now, any of us can end up in prison. Jesse here has the wrong name. He had the same name as somebody that there was a warrant out for his arrest, and the Pasco County Sheriff's Office came and arrested him. He said, I don't think I'm the guy. The guy you're looking for is taller than me, and they arrested him anyway, right? That could happen to any of you. Any of you could end up in jail by the end of today if you happen to have the same name as somebody who's in there. That's why it says in the Bible, come help people who are in jail, right? How do you get them out? We said our thoughts to them are winging, but if I'm in jail, I don't want thoughts. I want you to get me out of there, right? How do you get somebody out of there? Well, bail, everybody kind of knows what bail is. Bail is when you obtain the release of somebody by providing a security. So in theory, if I'm in jail, somebody that loves me or I myself can put up some money and say, I will show up for my trial. And if you sentence me to prison, then I guess I'll go. But I'm not going to run off. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to face, what I've been accused of, and I'll get this money back when I show up. It was supposed to be security. Now, this fellow right here is King Edward I. He was not portrayed favorably in the movie Braveheart, also known as the Hammer of Scots. But one thing that he did in the beginning of his reign was he tried to get a hold of the criminal justice system in England. There was this feudal system where each kind of feudal lord had their own ideas, and bail had already kind of been around, but it was a corrupt practice. It was if you were in jail, you could pay the sheriff to let you out until your trial, and sheriffs would charge money for people they shouldn't have charged for, because it was a way for sheriffs to make money. And sheriffs would not let people out that they should have let out, because even though that they had a system that allowed for it. So it wasn't uniform, and from feudal lord to feudal lord, it wasn't the same. And he tried to bring it all into royal control and say, we're going to call together Parliament, and we're going to pass the Statute of Westminster in 1275. It did a couple of things. It distinguished between offenses that you could and couldn't be bailed out for, and it set some rules and said that if the sheriffs disobey the rules, the sheriffs themselves will be in prison. That was the year 1275. Now again, talking about Back to the Future, did King Edward I think when he did that in the year 1275 that we'd be talking about it right now in Florida in the year 2023? No, he didn't. He didn't even know there was a Florida, right? It was 1275. That was 750 years ago. But you do one small thing, and it reverberates for future. And the things that you do today can reverberate into the future. That's magic. That's you changing the direction of the universe, right? Today we have our friendly local bail bondsman. This one's right down the street from my house. Now, a bond is different than bail. Bail is when I take a bunch of money and I hand it to the sheriff, and I say, "Here, hold on to this and give it back to me when my person shows up for court." Now, a bail bond, it looks like this. This is a bail bond. A bail bond is 10% of the amount that was set for bail, or $100, whichever one is more. And it's basically insurance. It's an insurance company that you give the money to and say, there's $10,000 bail on my spouse or my child or my parent. Here's $1,000. And I'm never going to see that $1,000 again, right? That's a fee. That's a premium on an insurance policy that my person is going to show up, right? And then in theory, if they don't show up, the insurance company is going to pay that $10,000 to the state. Now, they don't actually ever do it, and nobody's making them do it, but that's an entirely different sermon. But this is a big industry, right? It's a tax, right? That's what it is. It's a one-time payment. If you get arrested or if somebody gets arrested, you pay this money to this insurance company. And believe me, they don't want this to change, right? Anytime somebody starts talking about maybe we shouldn't have cash bail anymore, maybe it's archaic, maybe it's something that made sense in the time of King Edward I but doesn't make so much sense today. Anytime that legislatures start talking about that, this lobby comes out and says, now wait a minute, we've got a good thing going here. Every time somebody gets arrested, they have to give us some money, and we've got lots and lots of money, and we enjoy making a big pile and rolling around in it, and we're not going to be able to do that anymore if you change the system. So far, Illinois is the only state that has ever completely done away with the cash bail system, and it's recent, so we're going to watch them and see how that turns out, but I think it's going to be all right? So this is a bail bond. They sign that, they file with the court, and you get out. So it's either you pay all the money and you maybe get it back, which you don't, I'm going to get to that, or you pay this one-time fee and it goes to an insurance company, and then they keep your money. That's how it works. That's how our system works. Now, there is a definition of cash bail. It says its purpose is to ensure the appearance of the criminal defendant at the subsequent proceedings and to protect the community against the danger of the criminal defendant. Now, there are protections against this because if I have bail that is more money than I have or that anybody that likes me has, then I can't afford it, and I've basically been held pre-trial without bail, right? There's no difference between having no bail and bail that I can't afford. Either way, I'm staying in prison. But we have our Eighth Amendment that says excessive bail shall not be required. That's one of the founding principles of our country, is that when they came up with what are the 10 amendments that should go into the Bill of Rights, this made the list. This was that important back at the time. It's in the Florida Constitution, too. The Florida Constitution says, every person charged with a crime or violation of a municipal or county ordinance shall be entitled
to pretrial release on reasonable conditions, unless if no conditions can protect the community from the risk of physical harms and ensure the presence of the accused at trial or ensure the integrity of the process. I don't care how much money Jeffrey Epstein has, you can't trust him to be out of jail, right? So there are people that are so dangerous that you can't have them. But pretrial detention requires the state to prove that you have a Jeffrey Epstein here, that you have somebody that no conditions of release can reasonably assure the safety of the community or any person. That's what you have to be able to show in order to hold somebody pretrial. The Florida statutes go even further than that. It has to be a dangerous crime. There has to be a substantial probability that the defendant committed it. There has to be circumstances that the crime indicates a disregard for safety of the community, and there has to be no other conditions of release that are sufficient to protect the community from harm from this person, right? That's what it says. So the unaffordable bail is the functional equivalent of an order of pretrial detention. If you are setting bail at a higher amount than somebody can pay without making all of those findings that they are so dangerous that they have to be held, that there's no other condition, they're entitled to pretrial release under the Florida Constitution. So in order for the court to take that away from them, they need to make those findings. But are you making those findings if you just don't and you set the bail high? Well, here's State Attorney Andrew Warren. He's still my state attorney. If I do something wrong, I want him to prosecute me, right? Tell her to tell him to come have me prosecuted. But he was being very honest, and he says, in a case where somebody qualifies to be detained because they're a threat, sometimes we just ask for high bail, because we know that's going to shortcut the detention hearing and actually hold the person. In this article, he explains it's just too much work to do all those findings. We just don't have the time and the judges and the resources to make sure that we're complying with the Constitution. So we just skip over that and we ask for bail that's way too high. And then if they can't afford it, well, then we've held them free trial without making those decisions, right? Now, there's consequences to that, to the individual, of course, right? If you get arrested, again, any of you could be arrested today if you happen to have the same name as somebody that they're looking for, right? You could lose your job because you ain't showing up for work tomorrow if you can't afford to bail yourself out. If you lose your job, you could lose custody of your kids. You can lose your housing if you can't pay your rent because you can't show up for your job. You don't have access to your lawyer. Somebody who is outside of jail while they are getting ready for trial, they can call their lawyer, they can dig up documents and evidence, and they can help them their own case. They can help prove their own innocence. But somebody in jail can't just pick up the phone and call their lawyer whenever they want. And a lot of times they get pressure to plead guilty. Because the moment comes where some lawyer says, look, if you plead guilty, they'll sentence you to the time that you already served and you can leave today, even if you didn't do it. Plead guilty because otherwise you're stuck in here, right? And I don't even need to tell you about the things that happen while you're in jail. It ain't a present place. Is that you, Mr. Roundtree? Mr. Roundtree wrote this book called The Pokey, which is a great book. There's a lot of books about what happens, from the bird's eye view, incarceration in our mass incarceration regime. But David's book is about what it's like on the inside. Exactly what do you do with that cup of noodles after you're done with it? How many of them can you trade for something? I mean, it's a fantastic book. I recommend it to everybody. But thank you, David, for coming. But things happen in jail and prison that are unspeakable. Khalif Browder is the poster child for this system failing. Khalif was 16 years old. He was accused of stealing a backpack. He says he didn't steal it. We'll never know if he really did steal this backpack, but he says he didn't, right? He was held on $3,000 bail. $3,000 is a lot of money still today. Even with inflation, $3,000 is a lot of money. There are plenty of people who couldn't come up with $3,000. Khalif's family was one of them. They didn't have it. So he was in there. He was put in Rikers Island, 16 years old. Guards battered him. He was battered by other inmates. He spent 2 of those 3 years that he spent in Rikers Island in solitary confinement. The solitary confinement is difficult on a mature adult, but imagine trying to deal with it as a teenager, right? And after 3 years, the prosecutor said, never mind. We don't think that the evidence is that strong on him stealing this backpack. So they just let him out. So he spent age 16 to 19 locked up for a crime he was never convicted of. And he suffered a mental decline from the time that he spent in there, and he ended up committing suicide at the age of 19. That's what can happen to you in the United States of America if you don't have $3,000 at your disposal to deal with a situation like this. There are two Americas, right? There's the America for people that got $3,000 when they need it, and there's a different world for people that don't. Now, there's consequences not just to an individual, but also to an entire community, because 70 to 80% of the jail population is in there for pretrial detention. They haven't been convicted of anything. They're just waiting for a trial, and they can't afford to bail themselves out. 9 out of 10 jail inmates nationwide can't afford the bail. The average median bail amount is $5,500. There's custodial violence and deaths that happen in custody. In the year 2018, there were 13 deaths in Hillsborough County Jail. Only 6 of them were reported, and no charges were filed on any of them. And it disrupts workplaces, it disrupts families, it disrupts communities. If you're a child and your parent is not available to you because they're in jail, if you are an employer and your employee is not available, if you're a child and your teacher's not available, it takes people out of the community, just like It's a Wonderful Life, right? Just when you take somebody out of the community and it sends the whole world into another future. And I don't even need to bring up health concerns. I know there's more people wanted to be here today than are here because of COVID-19, but I can't think of more ideal conditions for the spread of COVID-19 than a jail, where you have a lot of people locked up together in a confined area. And I haven't even reached the racial injustice. If you look at this comparison between the populations in the jail and the general population in Hillsborough County, Hillsborough County is non-Hispanic black people are 16% of Hillsborough County, but 43% of the jail population. I know this is a shock to everybody, but maybe the criminal justice system isn't unimpeachably fair, right? But this bail combined with the fairness of the criminal justice system leads to this disparity, right? So now I said a minute ago that you don't always get your money back, and that's because Florida has, this is Florida, right? We have to take this to a different level, and so Florida has created this creature called ransom bail, right? Ransom bail is basically this. The legislature believed, and if you dig into the legislative history, you see that this is what they were thinking. They believed that poor people are lying. They're not really poor, right? These people and here's when they have fees or fines or court costs that they can't pay, the legislature said, well, they could pay it. They just don't want to. Look, they got all those tattoos. They could have taken the tattoo money to pay it, right? And they said, and the evidence was when somebody's in jail, they can always come up with the bail money to get out of the jail. And anybody that came up with the bail money to get out of the jail, well, that money ought to go toward paying your fees and fines. Can you see a problem with this logic, right? It ain't their money. If you are in jail and your mother can sell her television set to get the bail to get you out of there, she's going to do it, right? But should your mother have to pay your court costs? Should your mother have to pay your fines, right? But that's what happens with ransom bail. So listen, I love you all, and if any of you are in jail and call me, and some of you have done that, I'm going to do the best that I can to get you out of there. But it'll be easier for me to put up $1,000 that I worked hard for if I know that you're going to show up for court and I'm going to get my $1,000 back. I'm not giving it to you. I'm just lending it to you. I would do that for any of you. But, if I'm never going to get it back, if it's going to go toward your court cost, if it's going to go toward your fees and fines, maybe I'm not, and maybe that's going to discourage me from bailing you out. So I think this is unconstitutional. I think this deprives people of the right to be bailed out. But this is what we have here in Florida, and so far the courts have allowed that. So this here is a Father's Day bailout. Over here, third in from the left is my friend Bernice, whom I met when she called me and said, hey, we want to bail some people out of jail, and we need a lawyer to help us figure out how to do that. And it led to a lifelong friendship, and here I am talking about her all because we did that, right? You do one little thing, you change the universe. And we were able to, on Father's Day, bail out some fathers so that they could spend Father's Day with their children. And it might not have sent shockwaves through the universe, but it made a big difference to them. And everything that they did after that, we can take a little bit of credit for because we helped it to happen, right? And you can do that too. You go to this website, and it'll give you a list. This is from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. But you can do it in any county. Just go into Google and type your county, and then the name of the sheriff, and arrest search tool or something like that. You'll find it. And it'll give you a list of everybody who's currently in jail, and you can look them up and see what their bail is, and you can go down to the jail and you can let them out, right? That's what we're going to do today, right? So we've identified some people, and we're gonna do some magic. We're gonna perform a ritual that's gonna literally set people free. The song said, "Our thoughts to them are winging," and we're gonna do one better than thoughts. We're actually gonna go set some people free from jail. Why? Because we can, and because we're gonna change the universe, right? We're gonna do a George Bailey, and we woke up today in a world, in a timeline where those people stayed in jail all the way till the end of the day. And we're going to take the whole universe into another timeline where they didn't, right? Now, some people even ask me, what if they do something bad, though? First off, we looked into them. None of them have ever done anything violent ever. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But second off, what if they do? What if you do? Any one of you might do something violent, right? Should I just have you locked up just in case? In case you might do that, right? That's not how the system works. You get to do the bad thing first, and then we lock you up. We don't preemptively lock people up, unless you're in Pasco County, but that's another sermon, right? But what we're going to do, we're going to take up a collection, and I've got 3 people that I've identified, and they all have bail of $250. I'm going to introduce you to them in just a second. But you're going to get on $275. I'm going to leave right after the service. I'm going to skip coffee hour because this takes a minute to do, right? And I'll get the process started. And I want you all to come join me. You take $275 down to Martin Luther King, right? Second time he's coming up today. And you head over to east, and then you get on Orient Road and head south. Look for the signs that say you're coming up on the jail. That's where I will be, and we're gonna go up to the bail window, and we're gonna ask for these people. And they're actually not in Orient Road Jail; they're in Falkenberg Road Jail, which is where people are housed. I don't know why it's set up like that. And if I'm in Falkenberg Jail and you bail me out, I want them to open the door and set me free. But that's not how it's done, right? The way that it's done is they put you in a van and they bring you over to Orient Road and then they open those doors and set you free. So we're going to wait, but I'm going to get started. Meet me there and we're going to do this, right? Why are we doing this? Because it says to do it. Those are our sources too, right? Those are our 6 sources that we follow the teachings of the Jewish and Christian teachings that tell us to treat our neighbors as ourselves. And the book says to free captives from prison, and those Southern Baptists ain't doing it, so they're going to have to do it, right? Now, whoever wrote these words, this is Isaiah 42, 6-7. I think there's some scholarly debate as to who wrote the book of Isaiah, but whoever it was had absolutely no idea that 2 or 3 or 4,000 years later, somebody was going to take those words that they wrote and use that to explain why we're going to go down to the jail and bail somebody out, but it's happening, right? I'm reminding you that the things that you do today have an effect thousands of years into the future. The people that we are going to add back to the narrative today, they're going to have an effect on the future. We really are changing the timeline, right? Jesus said to do this. He said, I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Now, I love when people quote the Bible out of context, don't you? But let's put it in context, all right? That's part of this story that he's telling. He says before him, he's talking about Judgment Day, right? I don't know if you believe in Judgment Day. I really don't. But, this is the story, right? He says, I've got people gathered from all nations, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. And the king will say to those on his right, Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And the righteous will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, Truly I say to you, as you did to the least of these, my brothers, you did to me. He says, I am God, and as you treat the lowest among you, that's how you're treating me. As you treat the least among you, that's how you treat me. I know those are liberal talking points, right? And they ain't reading that in the Southern Baptist churches this morning. They're reading Think Big and Kick Ass. But we're over here reading the books that they say that they're reading, and we're actually going to put them into context. Now, what does he say to the people on the left? He says, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire." I know that's a little harsh, but that's what he said, right? "Prepared for the devil and his angels, for I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you did not welcome me, and I was naked and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison and you did not visit me." And they will answer and they will say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick in prison and did not minister to you?" And he will say, "Truly, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." Jesus said, I wonder who he's talking about here when he says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter into the kingdom, because the one who does the will of my Father, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." It doesn't say, "Those of you who believe that I exist, that what I want from you is belief that I exist." All y'all believe that I exist, right? That's a minimum, right? But he says, "I want the people who do the will of my Father. Those are my people." Whether you believe in it or not, that doesn't enter the discussion. He says, "On that day, many will say, 'Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons? Didn't we do mighty works in your name?' And I'll declare from them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.' You people who don't want to hear my words. You people who want to hear think big and kick ass and not turn the other cheek," right? So I want to introduce you to Esau T. Johnson, whom I met yesterday. Where's my Arabic speakers? How do you say Jesus in Isa? That's how you say Jesus in Arabic, right? What a coincidence. This guy's name is Esau T. Johnson. He's been in jail for 9 days, right? For sleeping. He is charged with sleeping. What happened was he's homeless, and somebody told him, "You know where you can sleep and it's okay? There's an empty apartment building. Nobody's living. There's an empty apartment in this unit. Go ahead and sleep in there. It's fine. Nobody minds." So he believed him, and he went in there and slept. The police came in and arrested him for sleeping, and he charged him with trespassing in an unoccupied structure. There was nothing bad happening in there. There was no guns or drugs. He was just sleeping. And he was arrested, and he's got $250 bail. He had a job interview last week that he missed. He's homeless, and he's trying to get himself back on his feet, and he had a job interview that he wasn't able to go to because he was in jail, and he's got a dentist appointment tomorrow, right? And so it took him a long time to get that dentist appointment set up so that he can finally get his teeth fixed. And he was going to miss it because he was sleeping, and he doesn't have the $250 to get out. Well, you know what? Let's get him the $250, right? Let's get Esau Johnson out of jail, and we can get him to that dentist appointment, and we can fix his teeth, and we're going to change the universe. So I tell you what, I got this hat right here, okay? Now, a couple of people that couldn't make it today have asked me for if I could transport their donations with me. So I got $50 from Dave and Britt in Tampa, and I got $50 from Sarah in Orlando. So there's $100 toward this $250 bail right there. Now Julie and Jim up in Port Richey, that's my mama and my daddy. They've contributed $30. So I got $130 in there to get us started. And I want to know if anybody has been inspired by the words that I have spoken here today to actually not just think about the people in jail, but to actually put those words into action. Can I get somebody to come on up here and put some more money in this hat so that we can get Brother Esau Johnson out of jail? Come on, there we go. Come on now. Pat, I'm going to need you to help me make sure that we got it up. And let's bring some music into this, all right? Here.